This week, Shane and I are diving into the careers of Steve Martin and Michael Caine as they star in Frank Oz's beloved classic caper comedy, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. This is Boy Party. Nice guys finish last. Meet the podcasters. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Boy Party, a podcast about movies where two major stars shared the screen and battled it out for screen time, top billing, and more. My name is Lucian, and I'm joined, as always, by the funny Englishman I ran into on the train who has gotten me caught up in all sorts of schemes, some of which will get me inevitably in enormous amounts of trouble. It's Shane Kelly.
Good evening.
You're the Englishman in the situation. I don't know if that's quite accurate.
I'm not sure
which of us
how
is the
you
Steve Martin and which
came
is
to
Mike
that
Caine.
Conclusion.
I don't think either of us fits either of these roles. I'm trying to think. Is there anything about either of us that you could possibly
Project onto this?
project onto this? Not really. Like a skinny English guy with a mustache and a smarmy American guy with a big smile. I don't think this is us
You
at
don't
all.
smile. I'm not smarmy.
I'd say by a little tiny fraction of a margin, you're the Michael Caine in the situation.
Fine.
He has a little bit of the way he tilts his head reminds me of you a teeny tiny bit, but I'm really pushing it there.
Fine.
My first encounter with this film, I saw a DVD in the shop once of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to see. It haunted me. Why do you think that was? I think it was just the name.
I think the title is a bit smutty. Like it's a bit dirty.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Sounds sexual.
I saw this on a shelf and I thought, well, I shouldn't tell anyone I saw that. I should keep that to myself.
It's dirty.
And I think it stuck. Like, I still remember that memory.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? But like at the point that I would have seen the DVD of this in a shop, the show Dirty Sexy Money was probably on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't think I would have heard that. I mean, we were treated as kids. 2008, you had Lesbian Vampire Killers with James Corden.
Mm-hmm.
Zack and Miri Make a Porno came out 2008, 2009. What other movies came out when we were kids?
Hall Pass and stuff. I was like,
No, I'm trying to think of movies where the title had like a dirty word in it.
okay, Sex Drive.
Sex Drive, sure. I can't even think of what that is.
No, Sex Drive.
What else has sex in
It's
the
like
name?
it's like a road trip.
Sex Drive. It's like a American Pie road trip type thing.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. What else had like sexy titles? The House Bunny. That was an interesting one.
A child wouldn't pick up on that.
Well, I certainly picked up on what it was about at the time.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of I feel like anyway, what I'm trying to say is that the mid 2000s, late 2000s onslaught of raunchy American comedy films was an interesting phase to go through as a sort of 9 to 12-year-old.
Yeah, because I think this
pre-sexual language.
but it was
preteen.
also my age of browsing DVDs and Extravision.
Yes.
So you'd see them all.
Yes, and you'd wonder what goes on in that.
Yeah. Oh, I can't watch that.
Yeah. And like you have that feeling, I definitely would have had a feeling about stuff that would later turn out to be genuinely scary, like the Saw films or like Hard Candy always really freaked me out.
Yeah.
The poster where Elliot Page is standing in like a giant metal claw. But then
I think I had a weird realization one point as a child, like after seeing like one or two adult films, I mean like, oh, stuff for adults can be bad.
Yes, that you'd be like, we would be talking shit about that now in our late 20s.
Yeah.
And as a child, you assume it's all taken as
Because
given.
it's for grown-ups, it's like, it's good.
Well, yeah, I mean, my parents are owners of a vast number of DVDs and previously VHS tapes. So there was always films in the house, and my parents are just big film watchers. So there's always films in the house that I didn't understand as a child that freaked me out.
Your
like
parents
the
have a
covers.
DVD of Sex Drive?
They did not have a DVD of Sex Drive. No,
Okay.
no, they did not. But like stuff like, Apocalypse Now freaked me out as a child. I found the poster of Apocalypse Now, which has now burned into my brain and is one of my favorite movie posters. I think many people's. This incredible image of basically Marlon Brando's big, bald, scary head kind of melting into the sun is so striking. And I think as a child, we had that DVD and I saw that and I was like, that's fucking weird. What is that? And the name is kind of scary too. Like, but that's not a scary film. It's a film that rips your soul apart, but it's not, horror. So it's interesting when you see things in your own home and you're like, well, that freaks me out.
I had a bit of that when Apocalypto was shown on RTE when I was a young boy.
Yeah, Apocalypto was a big
like,
scary thing when I was a
one
child.
scene I remember is the guy running away from the guys throwing spears at him.
Yeah.
And one of them like lands and goes in the back of his head and out through his mouth and it falls on the camera.
So stupid. That's such a dumb movie for dummies. Like I haven't seen.
You know what? Like if you show that to an 8-year-old, you will absolutely terrify them.
I know. I haven't seen it, but I get the sense. Yeah, I remember at the time Apocalypto being Passion of the Christ, first of all, was like big controversial film. It's so violent, it's so gory, and then immediately he follows it up 2 years later with Apocalypto, and the exact same conversation happens again. And my parents were so anti Mel Gibson that the vibes in my house were incredibly on the level of like, this fucking guy is making absolute smut. But it's not because they were prudish about it. It's just because they thought his movies were dumb and gratuitously violent, which they are. So I developed an attitude towards Mel Gibson that he was like some sort of purveyor of toxic poison.
Yeah.
That only really pivoted to something more rational, I guess, when he starred in The Beaver in 2011, and I realized that this guy is just a big loser. Sure. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, anyway, is the sort of film where you see it on a shelf and you go, ooh, very naughty. And then you watch it when you're 27, you're like, this is incredibly harmless fluff. This may as well have a Muppet in it. Like,
this is like the opposite of like an aphrodisiac.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're kind of like, all right.
Yeah. People put this on in on your phone in class in school.
You bring your date home and we're like, let's watch Dirty Rotten. Let's watch Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Well, people like to do that stupid cliche now of what's a movie that you'd want to replace all the actors with Muppets except one character.
Yeah.
This film is like the opposite of that. It's like they accidentally made a movie with human beings instead of Muppets and like forgot to adjust accordingly. It's so lacking in anything.
Just kind of any urgency or like,
yeah,
I don't know.
It's
like their schemes are very slow. They're not. Yeah. There's no kind of tension to their schemes.
At no point is anyone like hiding behind a corner, darting their eyes around to make sure they're not getting caught. Everything's always just fine, and you can tell from the poster where they are drinking martinis on the beach.
Yeah, like they're ultimately pitched against each other.
Yeah,
fighting for the attention of a woman at the end, but like all of their schemes are basically. Yeah, I think of that and I can implement it immediately. There's
no challenge here.
There's no challenge.
There's no heists needed. It's like if Ocean's 11 skipped every exciting step and just went straight to the end.
One guy thinks one thing and the other guy goes, "Oh, I'll do this other thing." And then that's it.
And the stakes of this film is a swindle of $50,000, which really isn't that much.
No, back in the day,
almost $50,000 in 1988 money. I'm not doing the calculator.
No, we're not.
Let's just assume it was a lot of money. Yeah, let's assume it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So this movie originated as a book, a play. I'm trying to see.
Sick, twisted mind of someone.
Something basically a movie called Bedtime Story. It's not based on anything. Starring Marlon Brando, Shirley Jones, and David Niven. Now that is a fun boy party trio. However, no one's ever heard of this movie, so I don't want to do an episode with 0 listens, so we won't be covering it.
We're doing Dirty Rotten Scoundrel, though.
Yeah, but people have heard of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Have they? Yeah, sure.
They have. No one's ever heard of Bedtime Story. Only Bedtime Stories with Adam Sandler. Mm-hmm. So that movie, a very weird cast, Brando and David Niven. But I can definitely draw a very direct line from David Niven to Michael Caine. Slightly less so from Marlon Brando to Steve Martin, but sure, whatever. So they remake that 25 years later as Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. When they are in pre-production on this film, it was at one point going to be a vehicle for Mick Jagger and David Bowie dancing in the street. Now, I get the David Bowie thing. I think David Bowie could play a lot of the roles Michael Caine has played. And they actually appear together in The Prestige.
Yeah.
I think that Bowie is obviously a super underrated actor. He's really good. And he's also got some of Michael Caine's weird kind of English, wispy, waspy kind of creepy guy thing going on. Mick Jagger, I don't know why you'd have another... Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Why would you put the two of them
Why would you put the two of them? I think that they cancel each other out a little bit there.
They don't even cancel each other out, but if you saw these two characters kind of playing themselves in film, you're like, you're like too self-obsessed to be concerned with
Yeah.
chasing a woman / a bit of money.
Sure. I've never seen Mick Jagger impress me as an actor, but I'm probably missing some of his.
What's he in?
That's a good question. I don't really know. It's gonna take me a second to pull that one up. Okay, acting. He's in a Nicholas Roeg movie called Performance as a lead, which Nicholas Roeg worked with Bowie as well. He's in a movie about Ned Kelly from 1970. They remade that, I guess, with Heath Ledger. He's in Kenneth Anger's The Invocation of My Demon Brother. Like, he's in interesting British movies. Like, worked a bit with Godard, worked with Scorsese. I mean, Mick Jagger's got an amazing career. That's outside of songwriting that I think people will probably reflect on more when he does die. But anyway, after they moved on from that, Eddie Murphy obviously is involved. This is such an Eddie Murphy movie. I'm surprised he's not in it. It would make a lot of sense for Eddie Murphy to be in it. And the least surprising thing,
got Eddie Murphy pace.
It does. And the least surprising thing in the entire world is that considered for the Michael Caine role was John Cleese. It really feels like a role written for John Cleese.
Yeah.
Michael Caine is kind of just trying to do his best John Cleese here. However, I don't like John Cleese, and I do like Michael Caine, so I'm glad it worked out this way in the end. Richard Dreyfuss was sent the script. He was intended for the part of Benson, but a misunderstanding resulted in him preparing for the other part. So Steve Martin read Benson's part instead. And then Frank Oz liked Steve Martin's thing and settled on this choice. They eventually chose Michael Caine. So, yeah, I mean, that worked out well. And Michael Palin, his friend, was saying that Michael Caine was trying very hard to emulate David Niven, which totally makes sense. I don't know if you're familiar with David Niven, but he's one of the greatest British actors ever. He's the star of the Pink Panther. But he's also in the amazing Powell and Pressburger movie, A Matter of Life and Death, which is incredible. He's a great actor. So they shot this film in Antibes, Cannes, Beaulieu-sur-Mer, Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat, Nice, and Villefranche-sur-Mer. I was doing that just to show off my French pronunciation. This movie was test screened once for a blue-collar audience and once for more upscale viewers, and both received high marks. Good to know. Not really anything else to say about this film. The plot, there's a British con artist and there's an American guy who's a bit more of like a casual hustler. He's not quite a career
he's just
scam artist. No. They team up. They go to the French Riviera and they get involved.
Michael Caine tries to make Steve Martin fancy. I guess that's like a good half.
Yeah, it's a bit of
a
a My Fair Lady thing with him. Then Glenn Headley shows up, who is a beautiful woman who I am not really familiar with, and she doesn't really do a whole lot in this film other than kind of stand around looking beautiful. But she's fine.
She is seemingly in possession of a lot of money for some reason.
Yeah,
and the two guys are trying to
heiress or something.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. She's her surname in this is Colgate.
Oh,
she is the soap queen of the U.S.
Well, that's fun. Okay,
it is. So I assume that's like Colgate toothpaste.
I assume so. Yeah. The Colgate Comedy Hour.
The Colgate Comedy Hour.
So they basically
trying to woo her.
They hustle her, but the twist is that she was actually scamming them the whole time. Because stupid men will always. I sound like I'm cynical about this, because as is the way with the world, the woman will always triumph over the stupid man.
Of course.
Which is good twist.
But also at the very end, she flies away and the two boys are left like, oh no, we got scammed. And then they all just start hanging out on an island again like 5 minutes later.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's
nice happy ending.
There's no stakes to this
If we keep going with this podcast for 20 years, we will eventually get around to doing the 2019 remake, The Hustle, starring Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson, which was originally called Scoundrels. Scoundrels is a way better name because it's a nice reference to this movie, and it's a good name for a movie. Scoundrels, it's a fun word.
It's a much
Hustle
more,
is so boring. I have never seen this movie.
I don't know. Did they just like Instagram focus group that name? Or like The Hustle has a lot of hashtags?
Yes, I'm sure they did. Yeah, The Hustle. And then Hustlers came out the same year. Yes. That's the crazy thing. Hustlers came out 6 months later. Everyone loved Hustlers. Huge hit. Loads of Golden Globe nominations. And everyone forgets The Hustle straight away. Also in the cast of that movie, Dean Norris and Timothy Simons, two guys that we love. It is a female spin on Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, because if there's anything the American public loves, it's when you remake an 80s comedy with the male roles played by women.
Yeah.
They did this with a few things around this time.
A little kind of unknown film called Ghostbusters.
Yes. They did it with Overboard. They did it with a few things. So it sounds to me like Rebel Wilson is in the Michael Caine role, but she's Australian. Yes, I think it is. I think she's in the Michael Caine role, kind of. And then Anne Hathaway is playing a British character for some reason, which I don't understand why you would get Anne Hathaway and then have her play British. In that case, you may as well cast Emily Blunt.
No, surely Anne Hathaway is the kind of uptight, smarmy one.
They both look fancy on the poster, so it's hard to tell. I don't know. They go to the French Riviera and then they scam this guy. Alex Sharp is the he was the star of the Broadway version of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
Okay.
They scam him, and there is something Lord of the Rings themed in it. Apparently, I mean, this sounds like something I maybe will watch on a plane someday. Rob Delaney's in it. Tim Blake Nelson is in it.
Okay.
Meghan Trainor released an original song, "Badass Woman," which is on my playlist, random movie tie-in songs. If you look that up on Spotify.
Yep.
And
that's fitting.
They it got an OR rating. Rebel Wilson, who also produced the film, disagreed and said it should be given PG-13. She accused the board of sexism, arguing that many male-led comedy films with far more mature content have been given lower ratings. Eventually, the appeal was successful, and the film was reclassified PG-13. Well done.
Fair play to her. I like Rebel
Wilson. I like her a lot. I think she's the right kind of honest about Hollywood. Sacha Baron Cohen recently, she was talking out about his behavior. She's a good person who says it like it is in terms of the film industry, and she's absolutely right. The fucking rating people in America balk at references to female sexuality. Mm-hmm. They would absolutely give the Seth Rogen version of this movie a PG-13.
Sure.
And they hear Rebel Wilson say pussy 20 times and they, give it an OR. So, fair play to her for doing that. But we're never talking about that movie on this podcast, so that's all we have to say about it. Steve Martin and Michael Caine. This is a real case of random generated boy party movie, right?
We have a big bowl with names of actors.
We just pick two at random. Whoop, whoop. Normally we can be like, well, obviously these guys, have a parallel.
These guys, of course, are cousins because they're in the Coppola family.
Yeah. They were nominated for Best Actor the same year. They
both shared a bunk bed with Wes Anderson.
It's unusual to be one of these is just a serious English actor. One of these is a silly American actor. They put them in a movie together once. They just happened to be famous
at the same
time. They were
A-list. Bit of an age gap here.
Huh?
Bit of an age gap here. I think.
How much of an age gap? I'd say I'm going to say 8 years is my guess. Mr. Michael Caine, now retired, is 91.
Good Lord.
Okay, maybe you're right. I'd say Steve Martin is
78.
Is about 78. Sounds about right. Steve Martin is 79. Okay.
So
there you go. 12 years. But they are really such different types of movie star, which makes this kind of a fun episode. A bit more of a variety than usual. Who do you think has the bigger box office taking? I wonder. Michael Caine. $8.8 billion. Michael Caine.
A lot of Nolan stuff in there.
And Steve Martin's is an okay, but not great. $2.9 billion. Look, the man is a beloved American household name. He's not exactly a blockbuster movie actor.
No.
Steve Martin's highest grossing film that isn't animated, because that just slightly skews it.
It's cheaper by the dozen too.
It's complicated. And it only made it made $250 million.
It's impressive for that type of film.
Which is really impressive. But Steve Martin isn't even the star of that movie, and in fact, he's not even on the poster. The poster for that movie is Streep and Baldwin in bed together. Never in a million years now would you have a movie where Steve Martin is in it and you put Alec Baldwin on the poster and not put Steve Martin on the poster. I don't know how they pull that shit off. It's ridiculous. And you know what happened that year? In a fun little boy, because that movie is
what
Meryl
year
Streep.
Was it?
09.
Oh, no. Okay.
So that poster is Meryl Streep, Alec Baldwin, Steve Martin, and it's complicated. In a fun bit of boy party antics, Steve Martin and Alec Baldwin, immediately after that movie comes out, co-host the Oscars together as a duo, which is really fun. Really, really fun.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they should have done it multiple times. So, that's a funny case there.
Yeah, I kind of forget that Alec Baldwin was beloved American actor.
He was still on 30 Rock. He was still on 30 Rock at that time. He was, he had his moments before. We're not talking about Alec Baldwin.
No, we're not.
We're actually going to talk about him very soon on a future episode, so we'll save this. His biggest hits, It's Complicated, a couple animated things, then Cheaper by the Dozen, Bringing Down the House, a film which made $164 million.
Oh, personal.
We have talked about that on podcasts more than most of films in history.
Yeah, just because we're kind of fascinated by
the poster and the idea of it.
And just, it exists in a very specific time in human history where...
Yes, that was a thing you could put out.
Yeah.
But I find Steve Martin's whole movie star post-2000 career is a specimen of its own. You can compare him a little bit to Robin Williams in the 2000s, but really the shit that he was putting out in the mid 2000s is in a league of its own in terms of the Cheaper by the Dozen movies, Bringing Down the House, the Pink Panther movies. These are like a very special kind of crap that you miss now. And in the case of Robin Williams, you can sort of say, oh, they don't make stuff like ORV anymore, but Robin Williams has died, so there's a reason why they don't make Robin Williams movies. But those kinds of movies that Steve Martin used to be in, truly, all of that energy now is directed into the Only Murders in the Building type of thing. Very harmless,
Like,
streaming television.
Did Sandler not just kind of overtake that role?
I don't think Sandler's movies are as low effort as those, though. I mean,
No,
talk
they're not
about
low
Dirty
effort.
Rotten Scoundrels. Steve Martin's 2000s comedies are the laziest, most low effort films ever.
Yeah.
None of them have high concepts. They're all just, what if a guy had children?
Yeah.
Adam Sandler's films are always, apart from maybe Grown Ups, they always have slightly more of a fucking premise than that. Like, I think the Cheaper by the Dozen, the Pink Panther. Okay, Pink Panther films obviously have a high concept, but I'm trying to pull at something here, which is that, like, I think people who went to see Cheaper by the Dozen in 2004 are now just watching Ted Lasso and Only Murders in the Building.
You
and
think
there
that's
is
the best
truly
comparison
nothing
for-
that could get those people to go to the cinema.
Yeah.
And the attempt to bring back the Robin Williams family comedy in the 2010s was led pretty much by Steve Carell, a person who has never really tried to emulate Steve Martin, but there hasn't been another Steve Martin type, apart from maybe, you know, Adam Sandler. It's interesting. I guess Ben Stiller kind of has a bit of Steve Martin in him.
I guess the Nutcracker now.
Yeah, Nutcrackers is a bit of a Steve Martin
Nutcrackers.
Cheaper by the Dozen movie, but that is not getting a cinema release.
No.
So you see what I'm saying here. Anyway, but we all know things have changed. in the
But
last
again,
20
is
years.
this just coinciding with the death of the movie star?
Exactly?
Where you,
Maybe. It's just interesting to me that, like, I became aware of Steve Martin as a star of movies that seemed so dumb when I was 8. Then when I was 14, I wanted nothing more but to watch PG-13 and PG-rated family comedies. And now I think those are the dumbest movies ever again.
Like, I think Pink Panther is like one of the worst films I've ever seen.
Pink Panther and Pink Panther 2 are
they're
some of the worst films
so
ever made. They're so bad.
Awful.
So bad. I
it's
recently got really into the... Sorry, make your point.
Yeah, it's just like he never tried to evolve. He was just content with his own little gags, and he
Yes.
just continued to make things, and they continued to get funded and
Yeah.
do okay.
I think it's a very cynical cash grab era of someone's career where really you can't give him any credit whatsoever for those couple of years. He was doing it for nothing but the money.
You
And
don't think he?
I think
was,
Robin-
You don't think he was finding what he was doing funny?
Maybe he was finding it a little bit funny, but I don't think it was it was causing him great personal satisfaction.
No, I don't. I have never seen a single frame of Only Murders in the Building.
It is just a TV version of those movies. It's not funny at all.
Okay.
And the jokes in it are all like, the jokes are like, Selena Gomez is like, oh, I was just texting my friend. Sorry, I wasn't talking. And then Steve Martin or Martin Short goes, what, on the Instagram? And she goes, oh, old man, it's Instagram. And then one of them, you know, gets up and runs around. Like, that is a stupid show. Like, people who like that show, I don't understand. It's so unfunny. Selena Gomez not being a good actor doesn't help. But people just like watching those two guys hang out. I would rather watch them hang out on the fucking Seth Meyers set than watch them in a scripted murder mystery. But what was I going to say?
They should have made the Kaminsky method.
Yeah, they should have. The Kaminsky method is much better than Only Murders in the Building.
Yeah.
Steve Martin, I did recently get really down a rabbit hole of reading Sony hacked data from the Sony hack.
Spreadsheets.
And I found a marketing strategy
PowerPoints.
document for the first Pink Panther movie. And it had all this like focus grouping about how much people liked when he said hamburger in the trailer,
Hamburger.
which I thought was really funny that someone had to make a focus grouping document about that.
Yeah.
But
That's where the cash is made. There's multi-million dollars at stake, by the way.
Yes.
You pronounce hamburger.
But Steve Martin's obviously affection that an older generation has for him is from his like actually slightly subversive phase in the kind of 70s and 80s where he made movies like The Jerk and Planes, Trains and Automobiles and stuff that was actually pretty out there for the time. And he would pop up on SNL and do lots of funny stuff there, and pop up on the Oscars and lots of funny stuff there. I still think he's really funny when he shows up on the award shows and stuff. I mean, he's really funny with Martin Short.
Like,
He's
did
funny
he
with Alec
begin
Baldwin.
to pivot to nearly exclusively stuff for kids?
Yeah, I
later
mean,
on.
sure. I don't think, but like the thing is, fucking Robin Williams would never go a couple of years without making a real movie for grown-ups.
Yeah.
Steve Martin was happy to go like several years. Now, there is a huge run here in the early 2000s where he only makes movies for kids. In the middle of that run, he does make a film that I absolutely adore, where he plays Mr. Chairman in Looney Tunes Back in Action, in which he dresses up as a little boy with big glasses, and all his scenes take place on one set in a evil office in an evil tower, but it's a great performance, and his whole performance is kind of talking like this, and he has all these goons who go out and chase the Looney Tunes around, and it's a great performance, and it's a great bit of casting.
Steve Martin just gives me the impression of the guy that comes to your house and like is still cracking his bits when everyone's gotten a bit tired.
Yes, I think so. He's in one serious movie in the 2010s that I, at the time, when I was an idiot teenager, I thought I went around telling everyone that Steve Martin was going to win Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars for his role in Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, in which he plays the owner of the football team.
Okay.
And Billy Lynn, played by Joe Alwyn, has to basically walk around during the prep for a football match. He's a soldier, and he's been invited to do a little walk at halftime. He's come back from Iraq. He basically spends that movie hanging out with a series of characters that includes Kristen Stewart, Vin Diesel, and Steve Martin. That is a weird film based on a pretty good book. Steve Martin shows up. He plays the owner of the football team. It is just a big, broad kind of, I'm a rich guy performance. Nothing else to it. That is the last film that Steve Martin ever appeared in.
Are you serious?
I think so.
He's not been in the film since.
I don't think so. I'm sure he's cameoed in one or two things, but I don't think so. Like, he really has just become a talk show guest in perpetuity, with the exception of Only Murders in the Building. Confirming that is the last movie he ever made, and that was 8 years ago.
Was he at any point like the number one movie star in America? Did he have a phase where he was the guy? Like,
I would never say he was the guy.
Not the
I would
guy.
say that at basically every phase of his career, Robin Williams was probably pulling in bigger paychecks for the movies he was making. I'm struggling to see a year. Now, Father of the Bride was huge in 91, and probably his peak as a star. He's also in L.A. Story that year, which is a really good movie, which is, I think he might have directed that. No, he didn't. Mick Jackson directed that. Our buddy director.
he never got to like Jim Carrey level.
Never quite, and never Robin Williams level. I think he's always lived in the two of those guys' shadows a little bit, which you can maybe say the same about Ben Stiller. Like, it's interesting. I don't know.
At least a lot of Ben Stiller's roles seem to be kind of reflective of that. He very often plays kind of second fiddle to.
I think, Steve Martin has managed to never fall into the hole of becoming a supporting actor.
No.
He's still seen as a lead, but now he operates exclusively as one of the three leads of a streaming show, and I think that is where he will remain. However, the day that he dies, hopefully not anytime soon, you're going to never see more fucking Steve Martin was my childhood, and you'll have to go, what do you mean by that? You mean big movie happened
big movie.
Cheaper by the Dozen and Pink Panther
movie,
were big movie, like
big movie.
So yeah, that's all I have to say about Stephen Martin. Steve Martin. Michael Caine's a 2-time Oscar-winning actor. Sometimes I hear people say things along the lines of Michael Caine, one of the greatest actors alive, and I go, excuse me, what are you talking about? I like Michael Caine, but he is kind of one note, right? I mean, his shtick is like, I'm an English guy, and I
can be tough.
I can be tough, or I can be soft,
or I can be Butler.
Yeah, and he's kind of Butler in everything for the last 20 years. He was knighted in 2000 after his second Oscar win for a little movie called The Cider House Rules.
Oh, yes.
First Oscar win is a hilarious one. His first Oscar win is for Woody Allen's Hannah and Her Sisters, which is a great movie. But he's not even the best performance in it. It's a bit silly. But he's been nominated 6 times. I don't think Michael Caine needs 2 Oscars. I think it's pretty unfair that he's got 2 and Tom Wilkinson died with none. Like, there are much better British actors of his generation. But anyway.
No, I don't think he's the worst person to have 2 Oscars, given that he's just been alive forever and has been working continuously.
He's been an A-lister since the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, in the 1960s, the man is in films that are still incredibly iconic. He's in stuff like Alfie. He's in, which is remade with Jude Law, obviously. He's in the Ipcris File, and he's in Get Carter. And he's kind of one of the big faces. Him and basically him and the Beatles and the Stones are kind of the faces of 60s London cool. There's a lot of like
I don't
Michael
think I know what he
Caine.
looks like when he was
Really?
in the 60s.
I think you do. I mean, he's very iconic in his 60s look in that he always wore a nice suit and big square black glasses, and he's a very attractive 60s man. Like just one of the sexiest English men you'll ever see. Cigarette hanging out of his mouth, exists very much on the spectrum of Lennon to Jagger in terms of cool.
He's got a little Bowie head in him there.
Bit of Bowie head in him. I think he's incredibly attractive at that age.
Always a guy that dressed well.
And like something that I think Colin Firth's character in, we talked about this briefly on King's Speech. Colin Firth's character in Kingsman is a complete homage to what Michael Caine looked like in the 60s.
Yeah.
And Michael Caine is in those movies, although you would forget it.
Is he?
Because he's in so many random blockbusters in tiny roles that you would really forget it. Yeah. His biggest hits: The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises, Inception, Interstellar, Kingsman, Tenet, Cars 2, Batman Begins, Now You See Me, Now You See Me 2, Journey to the Mysterious Island, Austin Powers, in which he plays Austin Powers' dad, which is great casting, Miss Congeniality, Romeo and Juliet, Bewitched, The Last Witch Hunter, The Prestige, Sherlock Gnomes. And then we're down into the muck of Going in Style, and he's in Children of Men.
Like, is his closest comparison Morgan Freeman?
I guess, but he's had a much longer career than Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think of guys who were big in the 60s who are still showing up in things, getting the and in the 2010s. Very short list. I think
the fact that he worked so pretty much never stopped working. He never settled into the guest guy you get as to make an appearance.
No, his closest comparisons are probably Maggie Smith and Judi Dench and those sorts of his female counterparts, because he's just had such a long career. It's incredible.
You're at no point
Robert Redford.
We got Michael Caine back for this.
Yeah,
like, he's just.
I'd say Robert Redford's an okay comparison.
Sure.
Like he is Cider House Rules, which I watched the other day, as an insane movie. If you haven't seen it, folks, it's kind of worth a watch. It's nominated for loads of Oscars in 99. 99, famously, the coolest year for movies ever. And who wins Best Supporting Actor? Michael Caine. Michael Caine in the Cider House Rules. Which is basically like if you made a Pinocchio movie for adults.
But cast Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire plays like a little man who gets raised in an orphanage somewhere in the south.
Tobey Maguire does move like his joints are made of wood.
Yeah, he does. And Michael Caine trains him to be an abortion doctor in
Christ.
the fucking cider house.
Oh.
Then Tobey Maguire gets horny and decides to run away with this sexy lady played by Charlize Theron. And Michael Caine is like trying desperately to do an American accent on top of his distinctive Cockney accent. Yeah. Be careful, my boy. Please don't be lured by the female kind. And Tobey Maguire is like, I've got to go. I've got to run away. And it's like a Geppetto and Pinocchio dynamic.
Yeah.
And it is an insane film. It's a bit Pinocchio, a little bit Waltons. It's totally nuts. It came out in 1999. It's directed by Swedish schmaltz king Lasse Hallström, and which is a type of storm you get in the Antarctic. And really just Michael Caine is fucking awful in it, like really bad.
Is this just like a Swedish guy who only had DVDs of American TV from the 60s?
Yeah, maybe.
Metal film?
Yes, maybe.
This is what it's like.
It's ridiculous.
Oh, it's insane.
And Michael Caine is terrible in it. And who does he beat for the Oscar? Little man called Tom Cruise in Magnolia. Just ridiculous shit. Michael Caine has referred to himself as a left-wing Tory, influenced by both his working-class background and service in the Korean War. He returned to the UK from the US when Margaret Thatcher lowered his taxes. He called for the reintroduction of national service in the UK. He's in this movie. Have you ever seen Harry Brown? I haven't seen it.
Harry Brown is like...
Harry Brown's a really right-wing film.
It is. I've seen... I think this is like the only film I've ever sat down with Michael Caine as the lead and been like,
it's like I'm going to watch this. That's the only film Michael Caine's been the lead in years. But it's a real like...
Yeah, he's an ex-veteran living in like a council estate.
It's a Gran Torino for British people.
Yeah, and he just goes around beating up hoodlums or whatever.
Oh, it's British Gran Torino. You know who's in that movie? Emily Mortimer.
Okay.
Sean Harris and Liam Cunningham.
Sean Harris is in it as like a heroin addict.
Okay, that sounds like Sean Harris.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Liam Cunningham is in it. And
is Liam Cunningham his friend?
Maybe
he has a friend,
and
No,
it
he
features
wouldn't.
the classic Plan B Chase and Status song "End Credits," which play over the end credits. Harry Brown. But he criticized Gordon Brown for introducing new income tax on top earners. He's basically a stupid old rich guy who likes his money. He endorsed David Cameron and endorsed national service for 16-year-olds. He invested in
Was he on the Sunak buzz there recently?
Maybe. He invested in a Liberty tax avoidance scheme. He described Ed Miliband's mansion tax as preposterous and silly. He voted in favor of Brexit, stated he would rather be a poor master than a rich servant. Then he said, I don't know what to vote for. Both are scary. To me, you've got Europe as sort of government by proxy. Unless there's some significant changes, we should get out. And then he said he had persuaded a doctor to deliberately give his father a fatal overdose when he was dying from liver cancer and endorsed voluntary euthanasia. He sounds like a stupid man who only cares about himself. I'm sorry. I mean, there's nothing there to suggest that he has any fucking compassion for other people.
Well, you know what? He is the face of England. So
I know he is.
What do you expect?
A couple other movies of his I'd like to quickly touch upon. You ever seen the movie Zulu?
No.
Zulu, about the Zulu War. I think Zulu was like 800 minutes long.
Oh, jeez.
That's not. It's actually 2 hours and 20 minutes. Anyway, Zulu is a big breakout for him. He is in the original Italian Job, the original Get Carter, the original Sleuth. These all get remade in the early 2000s. Like, he's in The Man Who Would Be King, a couple of war films, Educating Rita, which I've never seen, which is meant to be good. Him and Julie Walters. Then he's in Jaws: The Revenge, which he says he's never watched. He's in Muppet Christmas Carol, which he's wonderful in, which is a great film. He plays Scrooge in that. He is in Quills with Jeffrey Rush and Kate Winslet. Yeah, he's in Quills. He gets another Oscar nomination for The Quiet American with Brendan Fraser in 2002, where Brendan Fraser plays his like stupid gardener. Interesting though, the picture of Brendan Fraser on the poster for that movie, I feel like I've spent years of my life looking at, and I don't know why that would be. He plays Nicolas Cage's dad in The Weatherman, which is a pretty fun performance. He's in the movie Flawless. Oh, never mind, different Flawless. And then he spent the last kind of 6 or 7 years of his career making a lot of these like Going in Style, The Great Escaper, like Old Man Steals a Thing movies, which are sort of, progress on the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels type. His last real film that he's in is the Paolo Sorrentino movie Youth, which is a pretty good film, which is like Paolo Sorrentino who made The Young Pope and The New Pope and all that. It's a film set in Italy about some old men kind of hanging out and thinking about sex. It's him, Harvey Keitel, Jane Fonda. It's an interesting film, and he's good in it. And it's his last good performance because truly, like, the last 2 movies he's in are Tenet and The Great Escapers. It's insane that he retires in 2023 and immediately Christopher Nolan goes and makes his most Michael Caine friendly movie ever. The, biopic of a scientist, like, upset during World War II. Like, you feel like there's so easily a role for him in Oppenheimer if you wanted there to be. Yeah. It's funny that it's the first Nolan movie he isn't in since 2005.
It's kind of an American-centric film.
Yeah, it is, but you've got people like Tom Conti playing Einstein. There's definitely room for Michael Caine in there. What do you think of his Alfred? Where does it rank? I mean, we did our Batman series of episodes, but
who are the others?
You got the guy in the other movies who's just like an old guy who's fine in the Keaton, and he's the same across all of those. And then you've got Andy Serkis, and you've got Jeremy Irons, and unfortunately, I think perversely, I'm going to say I think Jeremy Irons is my favorite Alfred of this century. Yeah. I think he's great. He's great in those stupid Ben Affleck films. He's got real good, like, Jeremy Irons is the guy you want to be fucking giving you instructions from a remote location. Like, Michael Caine's is just like a sad old grandpa. I don't like it.
Yeah, you feel kind of bad for him.
I do.
The most prominent image of Michael Caine as the Alfred is the one of him crying.
Bane is the scariest guy I've ever seen in my life. It's brilliant. Yeah, but that stupid scene at the end of Dark Knight Rises, the worst scene in that otherwise magnificent film, where he just starts crying and is like,
I failed you, master.
I failed you. I don't like that.
I don't have a Michael
It's really bad. No. Michael Caine. Michael Caine.
I'm sorry, Bruce.
Master Wayne. No, I can't do it. Neither of us can do it. No. We struggle with the Brits.
We're sorry.
The British voices. Apologies to the British. Sorry. He also released a thriller novel called Deadly Game last year. I bet he wrote that himself.
He's also someone also does an impression of him in that video I see on Twitter once every 2 weeks where it's like Ben Mendelsohn.
Yes.
It's Ben Mendelsohn talking to Michael Caine.
Ben Mendelsohn's very fun to do an impression of.
the boys. Okay.
All right. Enough about these two.
Enough of these,
These two guys. Do you want to do the box office of 1980
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
with me?
Yeah.
Okay, pull it up there.
Are you aware of
1988.
Michael Caine's Twitter and what's going on with that?
Yeah, that's him and he runs it.
It is
Yeah,
actually
he has
him.
sorry folks. He does have a funny Twitter. He'll just put up shit like, saw this movie today. It was great. Be safe, be strong. Michael Caine. Like,
Yeah.
I can't really think of a specific tweet, but he runs his own Twitter. You can tell because, or at least he dictates to a person in his house because the punctuation and stuff is very peculiar. He does seem to refrain from using his Twitter for stupid politics. Okay, here's what he said when Quincy Jones died last week.
Mm-hmm.
My celestial twin, Quincy, was a titan in the musical world. He was a wonderful and unique human being. Lucky to have known him. I mean, that's nice.
That's one of his sincere ones.
Yeah, he posts a lot of weird old photos.
Yeah.
I'll find another interesting one now while you're pulling up the box office of 1988. Just the highest grossing films, please.
Okay. We're just not doing the week. Yeah.
Nah, no point. I won't get it. Oh yeah. Also, this movie was directed by Frank Oz. We're going to be talking about another Frank Oz movie very soon, I'd imagine. So I'm not going to talk about him as a director too much. But it is funny that Michael Caine stars opposite Frank Oz in The Muppets Christmas Carol, and then does this as well. Or maybe this is beforehand. I don't even know. Yeah, he posts loads of random photos out of context. Like he posted one with Sean Connery and Roger Moore a few weeks ago. Okay, October 6th, he tweeted the words, "Calm down. Why do we fall so we can learn to pick ourselves up? Batman Begins."
Yeah, that was a good one.
August 19th.
That was a good one.
He's definitely running it himself.
Yeah.
August 16th. Congratulations to all those who got the exam results they hoped for. Those that didn't, the best is yet to come. August 11th. We will always have Paris. August 11th. Beautiful Paris. August 10. Give peace a chance. August 7. Calm down. He's tweeting calm down multiple times. Does he think he's tweeting keep calm and carry on or some sort of like British wartime? All right.
I don't know.
Silly old man.
He's telling his Alexa to turn off. And
Yes,
he's
he
just
probably
calm
is.
down.
Yes, he probably is.
Oh God. There is an incredible slate here of top 10 films of 1988. And you can see exactly where Dirty Rotten Scoundrels fits in.
Okay. Give me some clues. What's number one?
It's a Disney comedy.
Live action. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
No, it's semi-live action, I believe.
Honey, I Shrunk the Wife?
No, it's not. Nobody's been shrunk.
Nobody's been I don't like movies where someone's been shrunk.
The director of this has a film out this year that we're yet to see.
Ridley Scott?
No.
Oh, we've yet to see.
Yet to see.
Brady Corbett?
Mhm.
Who has a film out this year that we've yet to see?
I think it's already out in the States.
Are you mixing up Ivan Reitman and Jason Reitman?
Nope.
It's already out in the States. So there's a director
It's a
who's...
semi-live action.
Oh,
comedy.
Mr. Zemeckis.
Mr. Zemeckis.
Is this Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
It's Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, not a fan.
Ah,
Not a fan.
it made $151 million.
Insane that a movie with Bob Hoskins as a detective was making $151 million. It does also feature cartoons. Anyway.
Number 2.
Okay.
Not something particularly good. Led by an actor we've discussed on this podcast. This specific episode in a somewhat negative light.
Jesus.
So someone we kind of shit on a bit sometimes.
Schwarzenegger?
No.
Someone we shit on sometimes. He's old now.
Yeah.
Have we done a recent movie or an early movie?
We did a.
Is it one of our 90s movies? Like
It's one of our mid-2000s movies.
Mid-2000s movies. Jesus.
Even on this specific episode, we've said bad things.
We've said bad. So it's Eddie Murphy.
It's Eddie Murphy.
Have we done Eddie Murphy? Oh, we did Norbit. Eddie Murphy in the 80s. Beverly Hills Cop? No, so it's after that. Eddie Murphy.
This got a sequel recently.
So this is Coming to America.
Coming to America.
Yeah, no interest.
Next up,
No interest.
another guy we spoke about on this podcast, this specific
Robin
episode.
Williams.
Robin Williams.
These are the guys in the 80s, and they all
Yeah.
suck. What is Robin Williams making this year? Geez. What would he be up to? So this is pre-Doubtfire.
The genre. Okay, we might have a review for
What's
this.
he doing here? Is this a comedy?
I don't think so. It's listed as a dark comedy under on its genre on the numbers. You haven't
Right.
logged this, so I don't think you've seen it.
I haven't logged it. Okay.
Forrest Whitaker is second build.
I don't know.
This is Barry Levinson's Good Morning Vietnam.
Oh God, never watching that. What an annoying poster.
Mm.
I do not need Robin Williams in a role where he is encouraged to shout at me.
Yeah. Next up.
Yeah.
Another
Guy
just like this is probably a role Steve Martin could have played.
Okay.
Like every film on this top 10 list is just
played,
like
yeah.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Okay, I'm not sure Steve Martin could have played the guy in Coming to America. That would have been offensive, but sure.
No, that's not.
Right. Okay, so this is another comedy star.
Yeah.
Bill Murray.
No. This is something we like.
Who do we like? Danny DeVito? Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks.
What's he doing in 1988? Is this The Burbs?
Nope.
The Money Pool?
Nope.
The fucking... What else would he be doing in the late 80s?
What's some
Joe versus the Volcano?
What's a concept that would appeal to children?
So is it big?
It's big.
Oh, it's very early Tom Hanks then. Okay.
Yeah.
The first Oscar nomination. Very good.
Next up, more 80s, not very good comedy slop.
I don't know.
Crocodile Dundee 2.
Oh, so that's the one that starts with him going electric eel fishing, and it goes downhill from there.
Oh, buddy.
Awful.
We don't put Australians in with electric
I
stinging.
actually don't want to talk about this box office anymore. It's making me feel sick.
Yeah, next up is Three Men and a Baby.
Jesus Christ, this is awful. This is awful. I'm so glad we weren't alive in the 80s.
Oh, God.
Like, look, it's all well and good for us to be glad we weren't alive in the 80s. But the fact that the fact that there are people who were alive at that time who will defend these movies as 5-star classics because they've never grown out of their baby brains.
Yeah.
And they are,
Like,
they write for Empire magazine. Like, it's like, fucking grow up. Like,
yeah.
if I go on fucking Letterboxd now and anyone has given Three Men and a Baby 5 stars, unfollow instantly. Ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for this episode of Boy Party. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us talk about the classic beloved film, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. So much detail about that film. We did this one because of Shane. He picked it. Blame him.
What was the other one we were going to do?
Due Date.
Due Date, yeah.
Bet you would have rather us talk about Due Date.
Hey, I like to keep the decades flowing.
Yeah, we need to.
I like a bit of fluctuation in the decades.
I mean, I think we're
not doing any more 80s comedies.
We weren't going to be talking about Michael Caine otherwise. This is kind of the only Boy Party we had for him on the list. So, there we go. Michael Caine. There's a real movie star. Now we've talked about it.
We're done with the 80s. The 80s are canceled.
No more 80s. There's basically nothing from the 80s I'd want to talk about now.
Was music better in the 80s?
Is Thelma and Louise from the 80s? Maybe. We'll talk about that. I can't think of anything else, though. Was music better in the 80s? Drugs were better?
Drugs were better.
Drugs were better. Why who go to the cinema when you could just have drugs?
Yeah, like, I don't. This is so low effort.
Yeah. As is this episode.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. BoyPartyPod.com. Follow BoyPartyPod on Blue Sky and Instagram. See what I did there?
Blue Sky.
We've pivoted.
We've pivoted.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Hee-haw.